Hello, it's Thursday the 30th of July. Rob Watson here. This is a Decentered media vlog, and I've come out to Ayleston Meadows, which is just on the south of Leicester, kind of cuts through the bottom half of the city, and it's a space where it's kind of lots of woodland, or a bit of woodland, and some meadows, and the River Soar runs through the valley, which forms a floodplain. So it's kind of like a hidden gem of Leicester. And it's sunny. The weather's been dreadful for the last few weeks, and July has really been a washout. It's been cloudy, certainly in this part of the world. Maybe in other parts of the country it's been a bit better, but it's been a real dreadful disappointment, and quite frustrating as well, because I enjoy the sunshine, I enjoy the warmth, and I enjoy getting out and about. However, that's not what I'm going to talk about in this vlog. What I want to kind of share my thoughts on. The other day I posted a blog about archetypes and the role of archetypes. I'm thinking about at the moment about the role of archetypes within community media, and how archetypes are an important facet for understanding the roles and the kind of patterns of social behaviour that we see and witness and are part of in community media. And the idea is that what is it that informs our thinking? We often think in a transactional way. We often think in terms of categories. We try to delineate people into kind of boxes, if you like, where people are assessed on the basis of them being fulfilling certain types of activity and behaviours. And I'm quite critical of the notion of behaviourism, and Carl Jung, who is the kind of the person who's most inspiring about this, is also critical of behaviourism, because it only looks at an outward way of thinking. It only looks at a suggestion that we are defined by our external activities, rather than thinking how we are informed by those inner things that resonate. I saw a phrase in a book I'm reading, Hollis, at the moment, and it said, Jung pointed out that we are inwards. We are 2 million year old beings. We carry the whole lineage of our evolutionary development with us. So it's no surprise that most of what we do is defined by our unconscious, or psyche. And I learned the other day as well that the word psyche is Greek for soul. So psychoanalysis is the analysis of the soul, and I thought that was really quite useful. It's an interesting language to be able to become familiar with, which goes beyond a kind of the behaviourist model, which is looking at actions, which is looking at, at the moment in the pandemic, it's about wash your hands, it's about wear your mask. It's nothing to do with why, and why that is, why we should do that, and why that is meaningful for us to do that. So looking at archetypes is a way of drawing on a deeper rooted set of ideas that are shared within the collective unconscious that we kind of use. And there are certain situations where certain archetypal patterns recur, and certain moments and certain types of behaviour are called for, certain types of attitudes, dispositions, if you like, are more effective than others. And I think with the pandemic, for example, to be broad, are we about to see a shift? And my hope is that this is the case, is that we are moving away from an archetypal pattern of prioritisation of certain types of archetypal roles, the grifter, the speculator, the kind of the spiv, the kind of the people who go out and get things, who hunt for social status, who kind of, the hunter-gatherer, that kind of stuff. And actually what we need to return to is a different type of archetypal priority, which is the carer and the sentinel and the guardian. So clapping for the health service comes from a deep-rooted place and appreciation. When the chips are down, you need people who can care for you and who can guard you and ensure that you are safe and well. And we've not paid attention to that in our certainly in the UK, and there might be other countries where it has been given more due prominence. So in community media, the question I've got is, what are the archetypal patterns of behaviour that recur and that are prioritised? And at the moment, there's a kind of, a focus on function. There's a focus on those who can achieve particular kinds of tasks. There's a focus on those who can undertake certain kinds of patterns of behaviour, like business meetings, people who can carry themselves. It's particularly masculine. It's particularly focused on in our mainstream corporate media world. It might be a cliche, but it's about how people are able to assume a position of authority. Ambitiousness is seen as being a key attribute, is that you're hungry for power, and that in order to change things you've got to be in command of a situation. And that's not what we need at all. We need community media has the opportunity, the potential, I believe, to offer an alternative which is based around collaboration, which is based around deliberation, which is based around engagement, which is based around listening rather than talking and lecturing, although I do my fair share of that, it must be said, but which is open to the idea that there's more ways to achieve what we want to achieve, that we don't want to just be narrowly defined by how many people listen to a radio station, just the numbers. We've got to think qualitatively, not quantitatively. We can count things, the bean counters, the people who manage the storehouse, the bankers, the storehouse of social value and social capital, have held sway for a long time. And if you can't demonstrate and show what your social worth is, what your social value is, in numerical terms, in quantitative terms, then your ideas or your role is diminished. And we need to be shifting away from that, and we need to be looking at, it's that Nell Noddings things about the caregivers, the care providers, and we need to be reattuning how we engage with one another in society on the basis of what the kind of care is that we need and how we are going to provide that care. And actually the kind of the reform of the care service that's going to take place in the near future has to be very profound on the basis not of just financial and organisational management, but in terms of who is prioritised. So at the moment, it's caregivers who visit people in need of care, older people, people with infirmities. They are given 15 minutes to go in, make a cup of tea, say hello. 15 minutes, 15 minutes later they've gone. They've got to sign off on a sheet, tick, move on to the next one. And it's about efficiency. It's not about nurturing the human soul through human contact and providing people with a meaningful sense of interaction. And it's no wonder that we're in an age which is defined by a loneliness crisis, because the parameters are wrong. The framework on which we describe and explain the process of engagement is wrong, and it needs to be repurposed. And it needs to come from the bottom up. It needs to come from communities themselves who are able to articulate a different model and a different kind of voice for themselves. So community media needs to play a part in that, and community media needs to be given a route into the discussions, because at the moment it kind of pretty much that we don't, community media is often sidelined. And that it's part of we're regarded in different community media situations are regarded as an information exchange, where all you need to do is provide messages, informational messages that tell people, in different languages what it is they should and shouldn't be doing, how they should and shouldn't be doing things, when and where they should go. And that's not enough. We need to be thinking in terms of how what is meaningful about that, and how that is arrived at, that message is arrived at, and how it resonates within different symbolic frameworks. So the archetypal roles, and the next stage of what I want to think about, is to really ask questions about what are the common archetypal roles. We have the kind of, I like the kind of Myers-Briggs 16 personalities type stuff, because it's a useful, handy way of framing this. So you have the 4 main groups, which is the, I can think off the top of my head, what are they? They are the Sentinels and Guardians, the Artisans, and the Architects and the Mystics. I think that's the four main groups, and it's not evenly distributed within society that we fall into those categories. Most people in society are artisans or carers. Most people serve an archetype, are drawn or called to, or have the capacity for a certain type of activity, caring, guardianship, that kind of thing. That's the nature of our families, our social groups. That's the bedrock of society. That people who do things and care for things. There's another element of it, which are people who design things and craft things and kind of make things, and who are not just physically but also mentally are able to imagine and create new forms of objects around us, technology, science, art, creative practice. And then there's the kind of proportion of the population who are less concerned about worldly things and are more concerned about spiritual matters, and who, poets and writers and artists, and that's not to say that anybody else is not concerned with those things, but they're drawn to playing that role. Now, in community media terms, we are dominated by the mode of performance and personality, that you have to be an effective communicator, that you have to function in a certain way, that you have to have certain attributes about being able to control debate and discussion. You have to be a moderator, you have to be an entertainer, you have to be somebody who is capable of projecting themselves or a persona, projecting a persona onto a mass audience. So our radio, our television, they're all geared up for finding those celebrities, finding those people who are able to stand out from the crowd to project and for those people to see something in it that they recognise of themselves. And it's a very sophisticated process, and there's a whole industry, media industry, formed around that. But that's not the only way of doing things. I think part of the issue is that we've become over-focused on personality. We've become over-focused on a narrow perception of what personality is, and what we're not doing is giving space and time for contemplation, for imagination, for creativity, for differences to be explored, and for stories to emerge from different people. One of the remarkable things about radio, and why I'm drawn to radio, is the simplicity of the form of just allowing people to speak for themselves. And when people find their voice and are able to talk and reflect, the storytelling process is probably the most powerful way that we engage with one another. And just being able to tell simple stories is a really effective, empowering tool. But that's pushed aside because it isn't necessarily fitting the archetypal model of the entertainer. It doesn't fit the archetypal model of the inquisitor. If you're a journalist, one of these high-flying, enormously well-paid celebrity journalists who are, it's more about them than about the questions or the people who are listening or watching the inquiry. So from that point of view, I think there's a wide scope to re-evaluate how we think about community media and use and reframe the debate and the discussion about the value and the virtue of community media, that we look at it from an archetypal perspective, and that we look at it from an inner perspective and what people gain and become by this, the journey that people are on, a more soulful perspective, rather than maybe just thinking about it in terms of that limited, narrow view of what people get out of it. So I'm going to be carrying on writing about this over there. It's quite windy now. I hope the microphone isn't too noisy. But at least it's nice and pleasant and warm. I'm going to carry on writing about this. I've got each week I'm going to try and write a couple of thousand words of trying to get my thoughts down. And what I want to do, there's one piece of writing I want to do, which is the next stage, which is about putting that framework of archetypal patterns in a kind of easy, digestible guide, more for my a sense of awareness of this issue than anything else. But then I want to start looking at, these roles within community media. So I'll be interested in talking to people about their experiences and maybe going back over some of the things, the podcasts that I've recorded and the discussions I have with people in community media, and looking for where we fit with those. What are people most comfortable with? What are people most drawn to? What are people most afraid of in terms of those archetypal roles? Why do some get given more credit, more priority in planning terms than others? So if you want to get in touch with me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Decentered Media on Twitter and Instagram, and the website is decentered.co.uk. There's a Patreon page as well. If you search for Decentered Media, it's always handy to kind of be able to buy some biscuits or a cup of tea for when we do one of our podcasts, so that's always welcome. You can always like the video and subscribe to the channel, and if the weather stays as it hopefully does for the next couple of days, then I'll try and get out and do another one of these, and I'll share some more images of what it's like to be wandering around Ayleston Meadows here in Leicester. So until next time, thanks very much.